Bonjour, my name is Joelle Ruddick and I'm a teacher in the role of Early Years French as a Second Language Instructional Coach with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. Today, this video is meant to support educators who are working in our 50-50 bilingual kindergarten model and who are delivering the program in French. To get us started, we're just going to quickly ground ourselves in some language from our kindergarten program. The first overall expectation of our kindergarten program states that children shall communicate with others in a variety of ways, for a variety of purposes, and in a variety of contexts. The specific expectations under that overall expectation include listening and responding to others both verbally and non-verbally, for a variety of purposes, using and interpreting gestures, tone of voice, and other nonverbal means to communicate and respond, sustaining interactions in different contexts, using language, again, both verbal and nonverbal in various contexts, and using language to communicate thinking, to reflect, and solve problems. One of the conceptual understandings that underpins this overall expectation is what you can see on the screen, that oral language is the basis for thinking and relating in all languages. This conceptual understanding appears 4 times in our kindergarten program in each of our 4 frames: belonging and contributing, self-regulation and well-being, demonstrating literacy and mathematics behavior, and problem solving and innovating. But what can we do as French language delivery model teachers and ECEs working in classes where the delivery language is in French? What can we do to support our children's development of oral language in French? So today this video is going to talk about simplifying our language and helping ourselves and our students eventually use simple words and phrases to express increasingly complex ideas. Here are a few strategies. The first one is using a pared down language. Pare it down, make it more simple. So I would say hold off on synonyms. Use the simplest words with the most possible applications. So as you can see from the example up here, there's lots of ways in French to say the word hat. There's chapeau, tuque, bonnet, casquette, béret. These are all increasingly precise ways of saying the same thing, which is chapeau, hat. So I would say just pick one and stick with it. An example in English would be, you can say it's a coat or a jacket, but let's just pick one and stick with it. So some examples of using pared down language in French when it comes to avoiding synonyms would be, instead of souliers and chaussures, just pick one and stick with it. That's strategy number 1, pare it down. Again, stress high frequency functional vocabulary. Knowing that circumlocution is a higher order thinking skill. Circumlocution is when you don't have the word, the precise word you need to express what you're trying to say, but you have lots of words around it. So an example of circumlocution would be that black ball that's kind of flat on both sides that people use when they play hockey. A puck. That's an example of circumlocution. So strategy number 1, pare it down, avoid using synonyms, stick with one word that has the most possible applications. Strategies 2 and 3. Strategy 2 is focus on verbs instead of nouns. You can almost always point to nouns. I want that. Come over here, pass me this. So some examples in French are je veux avoir ça. Ça is a great word for kids to learn in French, and it's a pretty manageable word for adults to learn too if French is not a language that you're yet comfortable with. It also helps kids speak in increasingly full sentences. Je veux avoir ça. J'aime ça. Donne-moi ça. Some other examples of verbs that you might use are j'aime, je veux avoir, viens, va. These are some basic words that might help our students express their ideas. And again, if you think of yourself as an adult learner going to a foreign country, if you don't speak a lot of the language, again, we have that experience perhaps of being able to point to nouns. Verbs are something that are perhaps a little bit harder to point to. However, verbs are often easy to figure out a gesture to go with it. So that will help support our students' learning too. J'aime, je marche, je saute. Just try and use whatever gesture seems most obvious to you and try and be consistent to help support your students' learning. So again, strategy number 2 is to focus on verbs instead of nouns. One way of doing this is trying to get into the habit of always encouraging your students to use a subject to start their sentence. And for kids, the most important person is themselves. So je or j'aime or j'ai are great places to start, plus a verb, and the rest, well, that will come with time. It's also a great way to help students who are beginning to have just a little bit of French. They can say the j'aime when my dad puts a granola bar in my lunch. And you know what? That's worth celebrating. The child just said j'aime. They started their sentence in French. And you know what? With time, the rest will come. The third strategy I'm going to talk about today is favoring present tense singular sentence construction. Now, as French learners, many of us have the experience of once you learn all the different ways that French verbs can be conjugated, you're suddenly paralyzed because of the nous and the vous and the il and the elle, pluriel. It gets confusing. So the regularized stem in most verb groups actually sounds the same. So just to give an example, I'm covering up an example right here. Je finis, tu finis, il, elle, tout le monde ont fini. Where it gets confusing is in the plural. Nous finissons, vous finissez, il, elle finissent. But actually, by just making a few modifications to our language, we can pretty much always keep it in singular with our kids to help reduce confusion. So using on for we or tout le monde, everyone, those are both singular constructions. Just another little tip. So the first idea was pared down language, try and avoid using synonyms, try and repeat. Second, focus on verbs instead of nouns. Nouns can usually just be replaced with ça for the beginning. And then favoring the present tense singular. So using strategies like on and tout le monde to help avoid those slightly trickier plural constructions in French. Now a little activity. I encourage you to press pause and to read through some of these examples, and I'll show you some possible solutions in just a moment. So again, I'll go through one example and then you can press pause and do the rest in your own time. J'habite dans une petite maison. So think about how can you say that with your students who don't know the word habite. How can you say j'habite dans une petite maison for kids who don't know the word habite? So take some time, press pause, and see if you can work through some of these examples. Hopefully you pressed pause and now you're back. So let's just go over again together a few possible solutions to how you can simplify this language. And again, these are just some possibilities. Your students may have different vocabulary than my students had, and you may have come up with different answers. There's no right answer. It's just an exercise in simplifying our language. So, j'habite dans une petite maison could be j'ai une petite maison. Le garçon et la fille choisissent la balle ensemble could be le garçon choisit la balle avec la fille. Le chien veut chasser le garçon could be le chien veut courir après le garçon. Est-ce que vous êtes prêts? Could simply be est-ce que tout le monde est prêt? Nous allons commencer le travail could be on va commencer le travail. Quand est-ce que la classe commence? Could be est-ce que la classe commence maintenant ou dans 2 minutes? In this example, there's 2 choices given to try and support the student and scaffold them with their answer. Again, quand may be something that your students are familiar with, but if they have trouble answering that question, a follow-up question might be est-ce que la classe commence maintenant ou dans 2 minutes? Number 7 is je veux que tu fasses le travail. We can just say je veux que tu essayes de faire le travail. Il faut que tu regardes ici. Tu dois regarder ici. Or, regarde ici. Est-ce que vous comprenez? Est-ce que tout le monde comprend? Marie et Paul, allez là-bas. Marie va là-bas et Paul va là-bas aussi. So I hope this helped you out today. A quick video on using simplified languages language with your students when speaking French. Pared down language, keeping it simple, stressing verbs instead of nouns, and trying to keep things in present tense singular. Again, I'm Joelle Ruddick, and here are the names of some of the other OCDSB and early years instructional coaches who you may wish to reach out to. You can also visit us on our Google Plus community, which is Early Years in the OCDSB. Thanks very much. Au revoir tout le monde et merci.